Alright, what's going on guys? This is Kevin Lawrence here. Today we're going to be doing an install of the BC BR type coilovers on my 01 IS300. Alright, now that we got the car up in the air, first step's going to be pulling the wheels off. Alright, now that we got the car up in the air and the wheel off, we can have a look at the factory suspension. Pretty simple setup, just kind of a double wishbone style suspension up front. It's going to have about 3 12mm bolts up top. It's going to have one single 17mm bolt at the bottom, and then there's going to be a 10mm bolt here that holds your ABS line onto the factory shock. Alright, we're going to get the 17mm at the bottom here. Now that we're up at the top, we got to get this igniter out of the way, which has got a 10mm bolt and then a 12mm nut on the back side here. Alright, with the igniter out of the way, now we can see our 3 upper strut studs coming through with the 12mm nuts on them. So we're going to pull these out individually in order to drop our strut out the bottom. And on the last one here, we're just going to put a hand on the strut just to make sure it doesn't fall. To make it a little bit easier, we're going to disconnect the factory sway bar here just so we can get the strut out and kind of fish it around the factory suspension arms. So this here is going to use a 5mm Allen as well as a 14mm nut here. So we're going to throw this in here to hold this still. The nut off, we should be able to slide this out here of the sway bar. Alright, so in addition to the end link here, we're going to drop these 2 lower 17mm bolts to take the steering knuckle off of the spindle. And once we do this, it'll give us enough articulation of the spindle to kind of pull the shock out. Our pry bar here and separate that, and that should give us the articulation we need to kind of move around to get our shock out. Alright, so with the 2 lower bolts off, we should be able to kind of lift our spindle assembly up over here out of the way, and then kind of free our shock out and clear our brake lines here. Okay, set that back over there, and it's out. Yay. Alright, with the factory strut out of the way, we can kind of fish in our new BC BR type coilover up here. Just got to go around the brake line here, and just carefully fish it up into its position. Slide up our top studs into the holes, and then I'm going to reach up here and just throw one of the nuts on real quick just to hold it for me while I get everything else buttoned up. Alright, with our strut hung up from the top, I'm going to go ahead and re-bolt in our knuckle back into the spindle here, so that way we can get all this going back together so I can get the lower strut bolt in. So now with the knuckle bolted back up to the spindle, I've got a jack here supporting everything up so I can line up the lower strut bolt to put it through for the control arm. And tighten that guy up. Sway bar and link we're actually going to leave off for now until we get the other side done, just because it's going to start fighting to try and line everything up just because the factory strut's on the other side and we've got the shorter BC coilover on this side. So we're just going to leave this off for now, and once we get the other side completed, then we'll go and hook up our sway bar again. Alright, back up top here, we're just going to start all the nuts on the top of the strut here, and then tighten them down. Alright, moving into the rear, we got to get under this panel here to get to the top strut nuts to get the strut out of the car. So first thing, we're going to pull the carpet back here, and then we're going to see this little tow hook here, which has got just a little 10mm bolt. We'll take this guy out and just get this out of the way, so that way this will free up our panel here. So once we get the tow hook out of the way, there's going to be 3 different clips. There's going to be one up in the front up there. There's one little pop clip here, and there'll be one here. My car didn't have them. I guess someone's been in here before, but once you get those 3 out, you should be able to grab the panel here and kind of just pull it back out of your way so you can access the top of the strut. Alright, now that we got access to the top of the rear strut, we're going to loosen the 3 14mm nuts. Now we're at the bottom, we're going to pull off our sway bar end link here. It'll be a 12mm bolt, so we get the wrench on the back. And now we're gonna get our lower strut bolt here. It's a 19mm bolt. So we're gonna get our 19 wrench on the bolt head and then the gun here on the nut. And now we're gonna move to our inner lower camber arm. We're gonna remove the inner bolt here, so that way this arm will come down and let us pull this strut out. We're gonna pull this factory brace out here real quick so we can get our lower control arm bolt out. That's gonna be two 14mm bolts. With our bolt out, we're gonna pop this arm out here, off the bottom of our strut. And last, our factory rear strut is held in by these two 12mm bolts up here. All right, that should slide right out the bottom. All right, we're gonna put our lower control arm back in now. We should be able to fish up the new coilover with the control arm up and in its mounted position now that being that it's gonna be a bit shorter. So we'll just slide this back up. All right, and then our sway bar and link we're just gonna leave off for now, just like the front. We'll wait till we get the other side done, and then we'll align up our end links and put our sway bar back on. All right, we're gonna put our little brace back in here. All right, now we're gonna slide in our coilover. Under the brake line here. Slide our lower end, kind of align our top, and then we're just gonna go ahead and slide our bolt in the bottom here. At this point here, I'm gonna jack up the suspension to push the studs up through the top. And then that way, once the jack's up there holding it, I can go to the top through the trunk and put the nuts on it to hold the top end. Now with our top up bolted in, we can tighten our bottom. And then that's it for this side. We don't use the two upper 12mm bolts that the factory strut used. So those you can just throw away. Pretty much this side's done. It's just gonna be a matter now of putting our sway bar and link on, but we're gonna go ahead and get the other side done first before we line all that up. All right, so after a month of driving on the coilovers that they've been on the car, they're all broken in, and I'm in love with the way that the car drives. The coilovers handle just a bit stiffer than the factory setup, which is to be expected with a coilover, but not too stiff for your everyday road driving. They've been handling potholes, rainy days, just all kinds of different conditions, and I have no complaints really with them on how they've been driving and performing. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hit up the guys at BC to check out their application list to see if they have a kit for your car. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to them or the guys over at Enjuku, and they'll get you set up with a kit for your car.